Circling back to organic compounds, let's go ahead and talk about monomers versus polymers. There are four main types, or classes of organic compounds found in all living things. Our biological molecules, as we went over, are our carbohydrates, our nucleic acids, our proteins, and our lipids. Now, for each one of these four macromolecules, their smallest unit is what we refer to as a monomer, where mono means one and mer meaning part or unit. So a monomer is just one part or one unit of a larger molecule. For example, let's look at a carbohydrate. A monosaccharide is a monomer, or the smallest unit, a single unit, of a carbohydrate. But if you connect several monomers of a macromolecule together, you get what is called a polymer. Poly meaning many, and again, mer meaning part or unit. So a polymer is simply a string of many monomers bound together. For example, still looking at our carbohydrates, a polysaccharide is a polymer made up of many monosaccharide monomers. Right? So we can see that here if we want to draw this out like so. Yeah? And then, if you take many polymers, you can have several polymers come together to contribute to the formation of many different kinds of cellular structures, such as starch grains found in chloroplasts, as just one example. Moving on to nucleic acids, a monomer of a nucleic acid is what we call a nucleotide. But a polymer constructed of many nucleotide monomers, or nucleotides, bound together, form polynucleotides, nucleic acids, such as RNA or DNA strands. And if you bind many of these polymers together, you can get certain cellular structures. For example, if you have a bunch of DNA wrapped around itself and packaged condensely, and there's a lot of them all together, you get what's called a chromosome. And now to touch on proteins, a protein monomer is what we call an amino acid. And a protein polymer is called a polypeptide, which, if you haven't noticed the pattern yet, is when you have many amino acid monomers bound together to form that polypeptide. And then many polypeptides can come together to form many different kinds of cellular structures within cells. One example is how they contribute to intermediate filaments. But as you'll learn throughout the semester, proteins are incredibly diverse. So this is just one of many examples. And lastly, we have our lipids. Now, lipids are actually a little special and sometimes a little confusing. So let's break it down slowly using this monomer-polymer approach, okay? Traditionally, we would say that fatty acids are the monomers of lipids, while glycerides are the polymers. And if you have many glycerides come together, you can find these structures in places such as adipose cells with fat droplets. However, this jargon is actually not correct in this circumstance. Like I said, lipids are a bit funny. We do not actually consider lipids to fit this simple monomer to polymer relationship because the smallest units of a lipid, as we said, are fatty acids. But binding many fatty acids together does not actually make a glyceride. You'll see these structures that I'm pointing to are the fatty acids bound together. But to actually have a glyceride, you have to have these extra structures up here attached to your fatty acids. And these structures are called glycerol. And it's because of this we don't consider lipids to follow the same monomer to polymer relationship. However, if it helps you to break it down to think about it this way, you can think about fatty acids plus glycerol coming together, and with many of them bound together, you get fatty acid or lipid polymers, which are your glycerides. Make sense? Again, if anything ever confuses you or something doesn't make sense, that is always okay. Please always feel free to reach out with questions to your peers and to me. Sound good? Okay, now, before moving on and doing a deep dive into each of these 4 types of biological molecules found, again, in all living things, I want us to have a brief check-in, okay? Check-in number 7. True or false? The monomers used to form polysaccharides are called monosaccharides. Check-in number 8. Are glycerides considered polymers? And number 9, why or why not? And then finally, check-in number 10. Fill in the blanks to define mono and poly, right? The prefix mono means blank, while the prefix poly means blank.